We're going to talk a little bit about grace today. And so I have a couple of things that I would like to do. One is I would like to talk to you about grace and what grace is. The second thing that I would really like to do is to stop on time. So that's my goal here today, is to talk about grace, to have you understand that, and also finish on time. So I appreciate Andy, and I appreciate the song selections that you made and the way that you guys sing with such joy. I appreciate that. Also wanted to say my thank yous to Les for his hard work in putting this week together, or this time together for the marriage retreat or for the marriage workshop and for that time. As a matter of fact, I think he's not here right now. He's out doing preparations for something else. So, Les, are you here? Nope. Anyway, hand for Les. Thank you. One of the songs that we in the scripture that we had today was because of Diana. And Diana was in the house the other day. She was in the morning, she was getting ready, making lunch for Kylie. And she's wandering through the church, or through the house, and she says, and she's just kind of there doing her normal thing, and she's singing, "Create in me a clean heart, oh God, and renew a right spirit within me." And she sang that, and it did two things. One, it just brought joy to my heart, that here's my wife singing, and singing this song and encouraging us, not on purpose, just doing her thing. And what an encouragement that was. The other thing is I got to thinking about that song, and what does that mean? What is, "and renew a right spirit within me"? And I thought, what is the right spirit? Renew in me a right spirit. Now, you know this is from Psalms 51, where David, who had gone through such struggle in his life, and then he's saying to God, "God, please, please, I have been wrong in my life. Create a new spirit in me. Create in me a clean heart and help me start over." And he says, create a right spirit. What is a right spirit? And I thought, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, the fruits of the Spirit. And then I thought, well, it's the peace that passes all understanding. And I thought, it's grace as well. And grace. Grace is what I want to think about today. And as I was thinking about grace, I was trying to decide, what is grace? And how do we describe what grace is? And if we're going to have grace toward our marriage, toward other people, toward our family, toward our neighbors, if we're going to be people of grace, what does that really mean? Diana was coaching last year at the state regional game in the Elite Eight in 5A basketball. I'm bragging on her, right? She was coaching at the state championship game, and a few weeks after this game, she starts complaining of headaches and dizziness. And so she left school, and she called me, and she said, "Dave, would you come with me to the ER? Because there's something wrong." And so we went to the ER, and the nurse said, "Okay, well," Dinah said, "Well, okay, hurry up, please, because I got to get back to school. I got to go work." And then the nurse said, "You're not going back to school." She said, "What do you mean? I've got class in a little bit." And she said, "No, you're probably not going back to school for the rest of the year." And she was diagnosed with a lemon-sized tumor in her head. And so, through great smothering of prayer and through kindness and goodness of so many people, and so many people in this congregation who were supportive and sent prayers and love and concern, she wound up in surgery and came through surgery and was recovering in surgery. And I'm sitting in the hospital, and people had come up and visited us, and we had lots and lots of folks that came. And one of our friends, Beth Plemons, pulled me aside, and she said, "Dave, I need to talk to you for a minute." I said, "Okay." And she pulled me aside, just like old friends can do, and she said, "Dave, Diana is going to be tired and irritable and emotional and sometimes illogical. And I just need to encourage you that you need to show grace. And I thought, well, that's a strange thing. And the more I thought about it, that is exactly what I needed to hear. That I needed to show grace, and exactly show grace to her in that time of struggle. And I thought a lot about what grace meant and how to treat someone with grace. In my family, we like to go on vacations like many of you, but one of the things, my daughter loves horses. And so we always try to ride horses wherever we go. And so we were riding horses in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. And we're riding along in this, line of people, and we're going down, and I thought, okay, normally those are just some clunker horse that you just one follows the other. Well, we're riding through the mountains, and it's a serious deal. I mean, going down these hills, and I'm sitting there looking at my child thinking, my child is about to get kicked off of this horse. And we're going down, and what I learned and what I realized and what they told me was that when you're riding down on a horse, you need to not pull back on the reins, because if you do, you're going to have big problems. But you let go of the reins and let the horse do their thing. And let the horse take their walks and take their steps and find their footing. But if you try to control that horse and pull back on the reins, you've got problems. Grace is giving rein to the other person. I spoke with the vice president of a major international company the other day. He was telling me that there was a problem with one of their accounts, and that the man who owned the company that they were working with, or that they were had a relationship with, was really mad and very upset. And so he flew down there, and he brought the president of the company with him and several of the other regional people. And so they all came there to visit with this little company that was selling some of their things. And he said, trying to make things right, trying to make amends, let's figure out what's going on. Turned out that the man that owned the company singled him out and said, "Are you the one who's responsible for this?" He said, "Ultimately, yes, I am." And he began to cuss him and berate him and yell at him and called him all sorts of names, even though he had not had anything to do with this particular account. Even though he never even knew the man just berated him. And I thought, why do we feel the need to punish other people? Grace is not jumping to conclusions. Grace is not making it all about me. I talked to a preacher of a rather large church recently. And he was preaching in this church, and he and his son, who was in the elementary school, had another friend who was at the church as well. There was a deacon's son, and they had gotten into some trouble and had done some things that they shouldn't have, and it was a little embarrassing. And it turns out that the deacons, the parents of the deacon's son, wound up spreading all kinds of rumors and talking about him, and just caused more and more and more pain for him, to where the preacher of the church, finally had to resign for his family and to get his family out of that situation, because his son could not recover from the gossip that had been done in that church. He left. He was bitter. He was hurt. And the gospel was not preached at that church for a while. And there was no grace. Grace is giving the benefit of the doubt. We see this problem of control in families all the time. A daughter dated the wrong boy and was threatened to be cut off from her father. A son started on drugs and was kicked out of the house. A wife became worried about money and began nagging her husband, who withdrew from her. A husband became consumed with his hobbies and the wife ignored him. A son didn't make a team, much to the horror of his parents, and his dad didn't think that he'd worked hard enough, and it changed their relationship forever. A wife was late wherever they went, and the husband got angry and yelled at her again. A daughter became increasingly sassy with her parents, thinking she knew better than he did. She cut them off, and they cut her off. It's not the life's events that define us. because we all struggle with life's events. There are things that every one of you will have to deal with. It's not the events that define us. It's how we handle those events that define us. Oh, that we can show grace. Grace is this: that which affords joy, pleasure, delight, sweetness, charm, loveliness, grace of speech, goodwill, loving kindness, favor, and thanks. I read an article recently. It was in the news about 2 weeks ago. And it was about a lawyer in Houston. And this lawyer who drove his Mercedes down the street, and he drove over a man and killed him. Turns out that the story was that there was a man who owned a house who was an investor who was standing in the driveway of his rental property, and the car, as it drove by, was hit by a golf ball. And the lawyer stopped and backed up and said, and it evidently turned around and drove over this investor in his own driveway. Drove over him, broke many of his bones, cracked his head, and he died there. Turns out that the man who was standing in the driveway was talking to his brother on the phone. And his brother reported that the last things that he heard his brother say was, "I didn't do it, I didn't do it." But this man was so angry that he drove over him and killed him for that. Oh, that we can have grace. Oh, that we can forgive and not be focused on justice. Matthew 9, verse 10 says this: while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. And when the disciples saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." And then he says this, "But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have come to call the righteous. Not come to call the righteous, but the sinners." I want you to look at this piece that says this: I desire mercy. Mercy. Isn't that part of grace? Jesus says to this man, "I desire mercy." Grace is not interested in justice and keeping record of wrongs. There was a sign in a place where I worked. I used to work for United Healthcare, and there was a big sign that was up there that said, "Assume positive intent." The practice in the office, however, was not necessarily to practice this positive intent. It was, however, sometimes to quickly judge and to assume that what the other person did and judge the motivation of their behavior. One day, a colleague of mine made a decision that ultimately wound up costing the company tens of thousands of dollars. And she felt really bad about this decision that she made. She made a mistake, and she knew it. And she felt very badly about this. And her boss came in and just berated her over that. Now, because he berated her over this, her thought was bitterness, upset, frustrated, lack of grace, lack of caring about her, more interested in money than she was about the employee. And ultimately what it did was it put a block to her advancement in the company, and she wound up leaving. Her learning opportunity became a roadblock to her road to success, and she became bitter and hurt and ultimately left the company. On the contrary, I also heard about a man who made a multi-million-dollar mistake in his company. And feeling terrible, he went to his boss and he said, "I am so sorry for that. I have cost this company, and I just want to resign. Before you fire me, I am wrong. Just let me go." And the boss and the owner said, No. We have millions of dollars invested in your education, and we can't afford to let you go. You're an important, valuable person who has been taught in and you have the experience now. You have an education that we have just paid for. No way would we let you go. What is that man's response when he goes to work? I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do what I can to make this work. The anthem of so many of us is this: you hurt me, I cannot forgive you. You hurt me, I cannot trust you. You hurt me, and now I must distance myself from you because you are not healthy for me. And we create walls and we close doors and we shut ourselves out from the very ones that God calls us to serve and to love. We carry bitterness and resentment or jealousy or fear, and we carry our wounded pride. How much better to put ill feelings aside and to pick up joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and self-control. If we make it not about me and we make it about the Lord, and we're able to share grace with others. Grace thinks of the other person more highly than we think of ourselves. The Statler brothers sang a song several years ago. It says, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And they just pretty much repeat it. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. It's not a very good song, but it's this, But it makes that point of Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Genesis 6, it's based on Genesis 6:8, that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And grace can also be interpreted as favor, that Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, unmerited favor, similar to a parent and a child. This is illustrated really well in a beautifully portrayed in the children's book, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. I'm going to read this for you real quick. Once there was a tree, and she loved the little boy. And every day the boy would come, and he would gather her leaves, and he would make them into crowns, and he would play king of the forest, and he would climb up her trunk and swing from her branches and eat the apples, and they would play hide and seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much. And the tree was happy. But time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone. And one day the boy came to the tree and said to the tree, Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat my apples and play in my shade and be happy. I am too big to climb and play, said the boy. I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. I'm sorry, said the tree, but I have no money. I only have leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. And you will have money, and you will be happy. And so the boy climbed the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away. And the tree was happy, and the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy and said, Come, boy, climb my tree and swing from my branches and be happy. I am too busy to climb trees, said the boy. I want a house to keep warm, and I want a wife, and I want children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house? I have no house, said the tree. The forest is my house, and you may cut off my branches and build a house, and then you will be happy. And so the boy cut off the branches, and he carried them away to build a house. And the tree was happy, but the boy stayed away for a long time. And when he came back, the tree was so happy. So happy she could hardly speak. Come, boy, she whispered, come and play. I am too old and sad to play, said the boy. I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat? Cut down my trunk and make a boat, said the tree, and then you can sail away. And be happy. And so the boy cut down the trunk and made a boat and sailed away. And the tree was happy, but not really. And after a long time, the boy came back again. I am sorry, boy, said the tree. I have nothing left for you. My apples are gone. My teeth are too weak for apples, said the boy. My branches are gone, said the tree, and you cannot swing from them. I am too old to swing on branches, said the boy. My trunk is gone, said the tree. You cannot climb. I am too tired to climb, said the boy. I am sorry, sighed the tree. I wish that I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I am just an old stump. I'm sorry. I don't need very much, said the boy. Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired. Well, said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could. Well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down. Sit down and rest. And the boy did, and the tree was happy. Grace is unmerited favor. Unmerited favor. Luke 2:52 says this, but Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Grace is not about justice, but about bringing out the good in others. Larry Reynolds, as you probably remember, was a movie watcher. He liked movies. And one year we gave him the movie, We Were Soldiers, about the Battle of La Drang in the Vietnam War. There was one dramatic scene in there where the American troops were being overrun by their enemy, and the commanding officer announces, "Broken arrow! Broken arrow!" And if you see in the movie, that was the time that they realized, oh, everything has changed. And so they start calling in airstrikes. And the radio operator is picking up the phone and he's calling in airstrikes to try to save all the American troops. And there's this one part where the plane comes in and drops its load, and to their horror, it lands in the American forces and burns many of the American soldiers that are there. And the radio operator just stops and goes, "Oh no, oh no, oh no." And the colonel stops him and looks at him and he says, "Keep them coming, son. You're keeping us alive. You're doing good. Just keep them coming." And that's grace, right? We will make mistakes. We will be wrong, and it's not to be berated about it, but it's to say, look, you made a mistake, and let's just keep going because you were important. I heard a joke the other day about a man who had just come home from work, and he walked in the door and unannounced told his wife, "Hey, I've brought my friend Joe home from work for dinner." And the wife looks at him and says, "Are you kidding me? I cannot believe you did this. I'm not dressed for dinner. I don't have anything prepared. I was just going to do something easy. We were going to have just nothing. The house is a mess. Nothing's cleaned up. I can't believe that you just brought somebody in here unannounced." And the man looked at her and said, "Well, Joe didn't really want to eat. He's getting married soon, and I just promised him that I would show him what married life is like." To which she probably replied, "Why don't you get Joe to show you what single life is like?" You see, grace is thinking about the other person. And it's always thinking, if I do or say or I react, what might happen? How will my partner feel? What will it be like for them? And so it's thinking about those things in the other person first. Grace is about bringing peace. Bill Gothard tells the story about Otto Koning, who was a missionary in New Guinea. He worked among the native tribes and had known only their village ways. And one of those village ways was stealing from other people. When Otto and his wife arrived and moved into their hut, the natives would also come by and visit. And what they noticed is that many of their items wound up missing. And they would go and visit and preach in the villages, and they would find their household items in the villages among the people, like a spoon wrapped around someone's neck, wearing it as a necklace, or an earring that was hanging on a lapel. Now, the only fruit that Otto could grow was pineapples. He had tried to grow lots of other things, but the only thing he could grow was pineapples, and he loved pineapples. And he took pride in his pineapples. And however, whenever the pineapples began to ripen, the natives would steal them. And Otto could never keep ripe pineapples. He was very frustrated, and he became very angry with the natives. And all during the 7-year period in which he was there preaching to the people, Otto preached the Gospels to the natives, but not a single one of them was converted. The more the natives stole, the angrier Otto became. And finally, one day, Otto had a German shepherd flown in from another missionary to protect these pineapples and keep these people out of his pineapple. His efforts only served to further alienate the natives who lived there. Otto took a furlough to the United States and attended conferences and learned about some personal rights. And at this conference, he discovered that he was very frustrated over the very situation that he had taken personal ownership over this pineapple garden. After much soul searching, he gave his garden over to God. And when Otto gave his garden over to God, he no longer got angry and was free from worry. He showed grace. The light came on one day when a native said to Otto, "You must have become a Christian when you went back to the United States because you don't get angry anymore." We always wondered if we would ever be a Christian. They had never associated Otto with the kind of person that he was preaching about because his message did not line up with his life. Otto was broken in spirit, and then he realized that he had been such a failure. Otto realized something else each of us must gain. To gain your life, you must lose it, along with your possessions. It was only until he had gave his possessions to God that he became free from them. And God measured back to him manifold once he had given up ownership. Grace is making it not all about us. Grace is not about holding up our rights. Matthew 10:39 says this, "Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." So I'm going to say to you this. Like my friend Beth said to me, practice grace with your spouse and renew a right spirit. Practice grace and love.